There are serious doubts that Trump understands the underlying causes of Maidan 2014, of the SMO, of the proxy war in Ukraine, and all the baggage, all that came before. So in the middle, to go pop, I think this week we're going pop all the way. One of my readers remind me of Goldfinger. So all of us who grew up watching James Bond will remember Goldfinger. So I applied Goldfinger to Donald Trump, and I think they match. So maybe we're going to have a fabulous spectacle, but no substance, unfortunately.
Do you think that this is just the prelude, the agreement to agree, the prelude to another meeting, which would be in Moscow at a much later date? The reason I ask that is because, as he is wont to do, I don't know how he thinks this is going to advance a negotiation, but President Trump just said a few minutes ago there will be hell to pay for Russia if President Putin doesn't agree to stop the war. Now, we know he's not going to agree to stop the war. Macgregor told us earlier today, Colonel Macgregor, that the Ukrainian military is virtually obliterated. Why would they stop the war now?
There's absolutely no incentive for the Russian general staff to stop the war now, especially because now they have total momentum all along the front line. We should go back to the definitive sentence that explains why Alaska is happening. Yuri Ushakov, top Putin aide. We received a proposal from the Americans that we think is acceptable. We can read anything, overground, underground, in parallel, subtext of what he said. Basically, he's saying that the Russians have no interest in having a blah, blah, blah about Ukraine and bigger questions. But if the Americans have a solid proposal, they consider it. And that's why Putin is going to Anchorage. What that could entail, if on the table we have a serious discussion about the overarching issues, which is essentially they concern US-Russia reset, a real reset. And of course, spheres of influence, expansion of NATO, the really, really serious indivisibility of security issues that were present in those two letters that the Kremlin sent to the White House and to NATO in December 2022. If we get to a situation on the table where they start discussing it, then there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Or this thing could derail in 10 minutes. We don't know. We really don't know. So it's on a razor's edge what could happen. The positives, the negatives are much, much hardcore than the positives. Slim positives, let's put it this way.
Who has the most to gain and who has the most to lose?
Depends on, there are two very complex relationships in terms of domestic public opinion and foreign policy. Okay, I'll start with Putin because it's easier. Putin is being criticized by some people among the intel agencies and let's say some think tanks as well, and some businessmen. He should have ended this war a long time ago. He didn't cut off the head of the snake. This is going away and out of proportion for too long. It's time to end it and end it the Russian way. Internal critics, domestic critics. At the same time, Putin answers to BRICS. Very important. Putin will be representing BRICS in Alaska for several reasons. One of them is it's possible that inbuilt in what Ushakov told us about an American acceptable proposal, there is the possibility that Trump would refrain from imposing extra tariffs and sanctions on BRICS nations that are buying Russian oil. Most of all, Russia and China. If that happens, it will be a BRICS victory, and Putin will get this BRICS victory. So BRICS is at the table in Alaska because, of course, the Empire of Chaos and Donald Trump himself, he is at war against BRICS, hybrid, hot, and cold at the same time. Trump situation, he has domestic opposition, he has total European opposition, And obviously, he has gangsters of Kiev opposition to any accommodation and any possible beginning of a peace deal with Russia. So we saw these past few days how the dementia of Russophobia is now completely off the charts, trying to smash the summit even before it happens. At the same time, Trump, in his mind, what does he want? He wants to transfer definitely the war from the US and the industrial military complex to the Europeans. The Europeans will pay for the war against Russia in Ukraine from now on, buying loads of American weapons and getting 5% of GDP of each NATO member. And obviously, the US will profit 1, 2 times, 10 times, 1,000,000 times from the whole thing. And he wants to do business with Russia if it's possible. If we get to the point of discussing a reset and doing business. And doing business on what? Oil and gas. And where? In the Arctic. And that also explains why this first meeting is in the Arctic. And this is the Russian carrot to Trump. The Russians suggested the first meeting in the US, and they suggested the Arctic.
Before we get to the Arctic, is Putin under any pressure from his intelligence people and his generals not to cooperate with Trump, or to get American and UK intel to stop firing weapons on Russian soldiers?
Exactly, Judge. This is the red line, not only for Putin, but for the Russian general staff. If in the discussions in Alaska, there is no mention of the US ceasing to provide intel to Kiev, not to mention weaponizing, then all bets are off and Russia will continue to do what they're doing. Attrition war, victory in the battlefield within the next few months or maximum beginning of 2026. And they are absolutely sure this is going to happen. Now, it's a national consensus. It goes from the Minister of Defense to the man in the street in Kazan or in Vladivostok. So the differential is, can we sit on the same table with the President of the United States and have a dialogue about resetting Russia-US relations? The overarching teams discuss the big picture. They're going to see that in the first 10, 15 minutes at the table. And Lavrov is going to be there. This is going to be quite something. Lavrov,
boy.
This dossier upside down.
Our friend Sergei Lavrov, our other friend Scott Ritter, who's in Moscow, was on the show with some guests of his, and we had a translator. They were government officials as well as business people. They're expressing the view that the Russian public wants a grand reset, geopolitical, economic, and commercial, cultural reset, as was the case, excuse me, before Biden imposed and Trump continued the sanctions. Do you think President Putin comes to Alaska with that on his agenda?
It's also on his agenda. It's a multi-layered agenda. Resetting relations as a whole, discussing underlying issues, and especially the background that led to Maidan and then to all those years of harassing of Donbass populations and the SMO, resolution of the SMO, respecting these 4 oblasts that will be Russian, and it is already inscribed in the Russian constitution. Demilitarization of Ukraine, neutral Ukraine, no NATO in Ukraine, no Ukraine in NATO, no NATO in Ukraine, of course.
Right.
They can enter the EU anytime they want. The Russians don't care.
All right.
That.
So let's say Trump says yes, 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 and yes. What about Zelensky?
Exactly. And especially, what about his sponsors, Judge? What about the Europeans? Zelensky is just an actor. What matters in this case are the sponsors. The sponsors
and among those sponsors is the American deep state.
and of course the American deep state. So anything that Trump agrees, by definition, will be opposed by the US deep state, except if Trump, after, let's say, this first meeting and the second meeting in the Russian Federation, which Trump is saying it should be held immediately after the first one in Alaska, he finally concludes that there's no way he can sell any possibility of any sort of arrangement to the Europeans. So he transfers the war completely to NATO. And then the industrial military complex in the deep state will continue to reap their profits in euros, selling loads of weapons to NATO. But then it's going to be an European NATO war against Russia, and the Americans are extricated from this war.
But this presumes that the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Brussels, etc., can afford to pay for the American arms and have the political will to do so.
Not only they cannot afford, Judge, because they don't have the money.
Right.
They will have to go in the open market and get loans with absurd interest rates that they won't be able to repay anyway. How they're going to sell this to domestic public opinion here in France, in Italy, in the UK, in Germany? It's absolutely impossible. There is a silent but extremely angry, I would say approaching a majority in most European nations, that they are doing the math and they are making a direct connection between weaponizing Ukraine and the degradation of social services all across Europe. People are finally doing the math.
If President Putin is unable to talk or negotiate for the removal of secondary tariffs, I'm pretty sure that BRICS has a plan B, don't they?
Not yet, Judge. This is what they are discussing. I'm sure you and our audience, all of you, you have noticed the flurry of phone calls these past, I would say, just less than a week. Everybody is calling everybody else. Putin, Modi, Lula, you name it. Xi. And they are organizing a collective response to the tariff dementia, let's put it this way, and to the overall hybrid war by Trump 2.0 against BRICS. They are coming with their plan B, which is not a plan B. It was always their plan A. We are de facto de-dollarizing without even invoking the term de-dollarization. We are increasing trade in our national currencies more and more all the time, all across the BRICS spectrum, and involving the 10 BRICS partners as well. So this is de-dollarization de facto. And you don't even need to comment about that. You don't even need a label for that. And in parallel, what I call the BRICS lab, they are still testing all this payment settlements mechanisms, which will be implemented between now, 2025, and 2027. They will all be implemented. There will be 3, 4, 5 of them. Not to mention payment systems like the CIPS payment system in China, the SPFS payment system in Russia. They will be merging. And this will be expanding to other BRICS as well. This is all ongoing, non-stop. Okay. It's a high-speed rail thing.